I think people have this misconception that a budget has to be this crazy, detailed Excel spreadsheet that has hundreds of cells and rows and all of these different categories and all of these different things. And so rather than doing anything, they do nothing. And so one of the things that I want to encourage you guys with is that a budget does not have to be crazy, detailed. All this is a spending plan. One of our admin team members, I love what he says. He always says that the budget is just a roadmap. It's a spending plan. It's something that shows you where you're headed.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is showing where our money's going, okay? Dave Ramsey says, often he says, you need to tell your money where to go, otherwise it will tell you where it went. Right? Which I think is another great piece of advice. So we want to create some sort of spending plan. We're going to call it a budget, even though people want to avoid that word. And you want to use that as the roadmap to create where your money is going to go. And so after you've analyzed your spending, you figured out where your money's currently going, you see some of those trends where maybe something needs to change. Maybe you're spending too much money in one area and you're avoiding another area, or you're getting behind and getting in debt in an area, right? Then you can create a more accurate spending plan that'll help to direct you and where your spending is going to go for the next thing, right? And so what we do as a family is we have what we call budget date night. All right, so every single month we get together and we talk about our budget. We make it a date night. We make it fun. Sometimes we go out to do budget date night. Sometimes it's in. Sometimes it's 5 minutes long, and sometimes it's an hour long. But it's something that we do consistently. We have it even set up in our calendar that the first or the last Monday of the month, we do it so that we're ready to go for the next month, right? And so this is a way that we talk about money in our family. And one of the resources that helped to create our first budget is from a book called Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey has helped tons and tons of people get out of debt. He's helped lots of people. He's kind of controversial in the financial world. Some people agree with him, some people don't. Yeah. I'm not going to give a stance on it, but I will tell you that it's been impactful for us to think through our finances through the way he does it. And so one of the things that I did was I took the budget percentages that he recommends. So what percentage of your budget goes toward your housing? What percentage of your budget goes toward your transportation? Food, etc. He has 10 categories plus debt, so 11 categories that he uses in the budgeting process and what recommended percentages those are. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to link a spreadsheet. I know it's a spreadsheet. No fear, all right? It's going to be a spreadsheet where you can put in the top, there's just one box where you put in what your take-home pay is. So your monthly take-home pay, there's a blue box. You just select that, type in what you take home per month as a family or as an individual, and it will automatically say, hey, your spending should be recommended somewhere between this and this amount. And that way you can say, oh, I'm way out of balance in this one area of my spending. I'm spending way too much money on transportation, for example. We're doing way too much here and not enough in this area. And so it's just kind of helpful as a baseline. So I'm going to make that resource available to you. If you have any questions, just reach out to us and I would love to walk you through it. But that's a great starting place for a budget. Stephanie, what are some things that we've done as a family? I talked about budget date nights, but how can we keep this as a part of our normal rhythms?
Yeah, I would just say, just start to try and make it something that you're talking about often. I think, once a month budget date nights and things are great, but at the beginning you may want to be talking about some things every day. And it doesn't have to be an official thing, just even in passing about purchases or goals that you're trying to reach with your budget. And then I think holding each other accountable too. Typically, I'm super consistent about putting in purchases throughout the day, but sometimes Brad will forget a lot. And so, just reminding him like, hey, did you put in your receipts? Or just that sort of daily stuff so that when you get to the end of the month and you're trying to sort it out and look at how y'all did, then you're not sorting through this entire stack of receipts and things like that. So, when you first start out, you might just want to really challenge yourself to let it be a part of your everyday conversation, that it doesn't have to be something awkward or that stirs up conflict or things like that. I think that's the most practical.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And even just making it a part of before you go to bed, hey, what'd you spend money on today?
Yeah.
That's early on. That's a way to do it. Just that way you can have that accountability. I think that's been helpful for us. The other thing that I would say is when you create a budget, you're not going to be able to stick to it the first month because you're changing behavior.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to immediately stick and work perfectly, and you're going to mess up and you're going to screw up, and it's going to be okay. You're going to survive. It'll take a few months to get into the habit of having a budget and following a budget, right? And so I always recommend you got to do a budget for 3 months before it sticks, okay? Now that doesn't mean it has to be the same budget every month. I mean, expenses and even income changes month to month depending on your family and your work situation. And so you need to revisit that pretty regularly. But one of the most important things about a budget is that it helps you to live within your means. And that's the best way to succeed with money. That's the only way to succeed with money, right? Is to live within your means. And so what that does is it says, here's what's coming in, and so here's what I can do with that. So when I talk about this percentage-based budget, what it does is it allows you to determine, am I living within my means in all of these areas? And so as we talk through these categories, I'm not going to talk about the percentages in the video. You can see that on the sheet. But if you see something that's wildly out of balance, that's just an indication that there's something maybe that's out of whack. Now, what I will say is that these are just guardrails. These are not, absolutes. It's just this is a way for you to understand how your money is coming in and out of your family and how you're stewarding it. And so one of the things that I would just say with that is as you look at this budget, as you look at these categories, if there's things that are wildly out of balance, that's where a conversation can be had, where you can think through, okay, what's going on here? What's wrong? What's the change that needs to be made for us to be able to succeed with money, for us to be able to live more effectively within our means? So as we talk through these categories, the first one is giving. I think that giving is so important, and it is the number one thing that is on our budget. First, number one in priority. And so this is something that I think as believers, we are given a really clear model and example for what it looks like to live generously, that we are to give of ourselves. And this is a priority. It's not what's left. And so we believe that it's important for God to get our first fruits. And so we have it as the very first thing in our budget, and we have 10% as our base tithe. All right. So that's 10% of our income goes to the local church. For us, that's New Beginnings, right? And so 10% goes there. And then above and beyond that, we continue to be generous. And so that's where our next gen commitment is, where we're giving to next gen right now in this current season at New Beginnings. And then above and beyond that, where we are able to support some other organizations, some friends that we're able to support. But it goes in that order to where we can give generously to the church, give above and beyond our tithe, and then be able to then support other ministries. And the thing that's really interesting is it doesn't matter the context, whether it's in church or outside of church. Experts agree across the board that having generosity and giving as a part of your budget is important. This is a biblical topic, but even people who don't necessarily believe or agree with the Bible, they say this is an important thing to have in your budget. And many times it becomes the last thing on our budget, but that's not what it needs to be. It needs to be the first thing in our budget. And this is something that we have grown as a couple in. Early on, it was like, I think we can give this much. But when we started to have these conversations and really say, no, it can't be what's left. It can't be the amount that we feel comfortable with. We got to start our budget with that, and then everything else falls under that.
Yeah. And then especially if there's months that, you have more income coming in, like challenging yourself to take that into account and increase your giving that month, and not just say, okay, this entire year our giving is going to stay the same, but really, take a look at those things month to month, I think, because what you don't want it to happen is you just have this number that you're giving and then you never think about it again. I mean, we want to be thinking about that and how could we give more and challenging ourselves. And if you don't put it first, by the time you get done creating your budget, you're not going to have anything left to give, and it's going to feel that psychological emotion of, well, we're just too strapped, we can't give anything, when really God calls us to give first, and then trust him to provide the rest.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And so giving is a part of our normal budget conversation. Hey, where is our giving this month? what can we give above and beyond? And so I think that's really important what Stephanie said, that we're not just setting a number and forgetting it. And there's some really easy ways to have giving be a part of your normal rhythm also. You know, the church has made it easy to give online to where it's something that you can do, to where you can text in, you can do things like that. Or sometimes it's better for people for discipline to have the check or the cash every single month or every single Sunday or whatever, for them to put it in. And so whatever giving looks like for you, however that can be a part of your normal thought process, make it a part of your normal patterns, because it's important for giving to be in the forefront of our minds. We want to live generously, we want to live open-handedly. So that's why it's the number one first thing on our budget. Then we move into savings, all right? We want to save for the future. People say, and there are statistics that would back this up. I don't know them off the top of my head, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to give it to you. Maybe I'll put it over the video or something. But a significant majority of the American population would have to go into debt if they came into contact with a $1,000 emergency. And I hate that. I really do. And so we want to be saving toward an emergency fund. That's one of the first things that we want to save toward, so that it's less of an emergency. Things come up, you know, you need to get new tires or something happens, and you've got to be able to do that. Well, if you don't have anything saved up and you've got to spend a couple $100s on some tires, that can eat up your budget. And it can be frustrating, it can be stressful within a marriage, it can be stressful in other things. And so what I would just encourage you to do is emphasize saving to where you can save for a $1,000 emergency fund to start with. And then once we've gotten through a couple other things, that you would save for a longer term emergency fund that would help you get through larger and more substantial emergencies, because they will come. Yeah. You know, the one thing that we know is that emergencies are going to happen. Right? And so that's the second thing that we want to do. That would also include any retirement savings or other savings for a new car or a down payment on a house. There's lots of things we want that to be important and a priority, not just paying for the things that are in the immediate, but we're thinking about the future in the way that we are budgeting, right? Yeah. The next kind of group is our necessities group, all right? These are the things that we just need to live, right? We've got our housing, we've got things like utility, our food, transportation, clothing, okay? These are necessities. Now, one of the things that we look at our budget and our necessities in these, and I have those percentages on there, is we take those things and we take them beyond necessity, right? We need to have the nicest house and the best clothes and more clothes, or we're going to have, you know, a huge car payment because we want to have a really, really nice car. This is where those times where I say, is something out of balance, we need to address it, right? Yeah. So if you're looking and you need to have a certain percentage for transportation, but having your car payment in there takes it to a really, really high percentage, it may be time for you to consider, is this the right car for me? Yeah. Is this something that is helping me to become successful financially, or is this something that's holding me back from all these other areas? And so you want to make sure that even though these are necessities, that you're addressing them like they're necessities, not luxuries, right? And so making sure that you're living within your means in these things, right? So lining those out, knowing how much your housing costs. Now, one of the things that I always say in this is it's easy to put housing costs and say, oh yeah, my rent payment or my mortgage payment fits in that percentage. Easy. But in these, it's including all of the expenses that are associated with your housing. So your rent, your insurance, whether that's in your mortgage payment or renter's insurance or however, making sure that that's included in it. Making sure that any other expenses, home repairs are in there. Anything that's associated with your house is in your housing budget, all right? So that's one thing to make sure that we're not gonna stretch just simply by the payment. We're gonna try to make sure that everything involved in housing is gonna be in that. Same thing with transportation. Same thing with food. It's not just your groceries, but if you're gonna eat out, it's got to be in there also, right? So thinking through those things. Then we get into health. This is, you know, health insurances. This is if you're going to go buy vitamins or something at the store, right? Or you need Benadryl, like those kinds of things. All of those would be in your health expenses. So making sure that you budget for those co-pays for doctor's appointments or medical expenses, having that budgeted in there because you are going to have those, right? The next thing is going to be personal. These are just individual expenses that you face. What are some of the things that are in our personal budget? We have
Like babysitters, or we put miscellaneous in there just for things that small things that might come up.
We even have things like personal care. So like
Schooling, I mean, Mother's Day out or costs like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, personal care products, or fun money. Would fun money be in personal?
I think that's in recreation.
Yeah.
But well, let's not garbage. I always get personal and recreation.
Oh, like gifts, birthdays.
Personal diapers and wipes, toiletries, haircuts, gifts and birthday, yard.
Yeah.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so the next thing in our budget is personal. So these are personal items, personal expenses. The way that we have these categorized, we have things like our kid purchases, so diapers,
Yeah.
wipes,
Haircuts.
stuff like that. Personal care products, so toiletries and toilet paper, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is in there. We have-
Yard, things that might need to,
yeah.
be used outside.
Yeah, and then we do have miscellaneous in there. It's just kind of some other expenses that we say, okay, we know that there's going to be a little bit of a miscellaneous budget because things that we're not going to categorize in other areas. So that would be what would be kind of considered personal. And then the final is recreation. All right, so recreation is the last one. This is the fun stuff. This is entertainment. So this is where we have, where we pay for Netflix, where we have Spotify, our subscriptions.
We do like a date night fund, and alongside that we have a line item for babysitters.
We also include fun money. All right, this is something that we enjoy and we encourage everybody to have in their budget is fun money. And what this is Stephanie has a fun money account and I have a fun money account, and it's a very small amount of money. Let's be clear, all right? It's a very small amount of money, but this is the money that you get to spend without asking her, right? Or she gets to spend without asking me.
Yeah.
We don't have to defend it. Now, we shame each other for it. It's like, you spent your fun money on that? That's dumb, right? We do that often, but this is important, and it's kind of a psychological relief in your budget.
Yeah.
I can go spend this money on this, and I don't have to answer for it. This is my money. I get to choose. And so that's just a fun little psychological thing that we have in there. And I would encourage everybody to have fun money.
Yeah, when you're first starting out, especially if you have some big goals, financial goals, or you're trying to pay off some big debts, it can feel like you're tightening up on so many of these areas that you, like maybe food, maybe you're not eating out as much, maybe you're not buying new clothes, to try and reach these goals. But having that fun money each month, even if it's just like $20, something that feels like this is still fun, like I still have this little bit of freedom, that just helps you keep going and not feel after the first or second month like this is terrible, I want to quit, like let's just forget working on our budget. So I think it's important
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
have in there. And then we also put in recreation a line item for like gifts and birthdays. I feel like that's something that always sneaks up on us. So not just family gifts and birthdays, but then like the baby shower that you didn't know you were going to be invited to that month, or all those things, that the wedding showers, you want to give your friend something on her birthday,
Kids' birthday parties.
Yeah, just things like that. Those little $20 purchases here and there can really add up, and then you didn't foresee them, and so that's something we really try and plan for before the month starts, is looking through the calendar and what do we have coming up and whose birthdays are coming and things like that. So
That's good. The last one is kind of an addendum, and that's debt. All right, and so we're going to spend a whole video talking about debt, and so we'll get into that in a little bit. But we want to make sure that anything that you have to pay down debt is going to be in your budget and it's planned for. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I hope this is helpful. Anything else that you would add for budgeting that would just be helpful?
no, I don't think so.
All right, just make it a normal part of your conversation.
Yeah, just
make
do
it. Just do it, and don't make it taboo. Talk about it. Be open with it. One of the things that we even talk about with our friends is, hey, we can go out, but can we do something cheaper? Right? Or we're short on money, so we're going to go do this. Or why don't y'all come over to our house so we don't have to pay a babysitter? Some of those things, and we talk about it because it's part of our budget, and it makes it easy. The more that you talk about it, the more that you live in it. It can also become contagious, and when you begin being successful and making a change financially, that becomes contagious because people want to do that in their life too. So Talk about it. Be honest. Share things that are going on in your budget. And as you plan your days, as you plan your month, make sure that budget is part of that conversation.